The Attorney General just threatened a sitting Black Congresswoman on national TV for exercising her First Amendment rights, and Jasmine Crockett's response is going viral. This is what standing up to fascism looks like. Smash that subscribe button because we're exposing how they're weaponizing the DOJ against anyone who dares to speak truth to power.
Thank the chairman. I now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, Jasmine Crockett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I first just want to begin with a news alert. Guess what? Joe Biden is not the president anymore. So maybe we can move on. Maybe we can move into the present, because it seems like we are living in the past. And listen, these are not the good old days, you know, like you used to sit around and your grandparents would talk to you about what used to happen. What we need to be talking about is how we are going to legislate, because I think that some of my colleagues have confused what our jobs are. And I get that we're sitting in judiciary. And so it may seem as if we are here to be litigators, but we are here to be legislators, which means that we are supposed to be writing laws, not trying to have our own trials and determine whether or not something is true or not, or whatever the case is, or who should be sued, who shouldn't be sued. All I know is that a great American hero, a good senator out of New Jersey, said something to the effect yesterday as he was shattering the record for holding the floor, a record that had been held by another racist in this country. As he shattered that, he said something about the fact that this should not be about left versus right. It should be about right versus wrong. And I am going to tell you that I want us to focus on right versus wrong. The reason that we are struggling right now in this country as it relates to people not trusting agencies, honestly, a lot of it is because of elected leaders. Let me tell you, one of the things that the chairman and I actually agree upon, we don't agree on a lot, is that we both know that there has been a sharp incline as it relates to threats upon our lives. Regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on, we both know and agree that as sitting members of Congress, we both are enduring more death threats than anybody should in this country. And I believe that it is because of the divisive rhetoric, and it is because of the selective enforcement of things. And so when we have, and I'm gonna be clear, because I had remarks and I'm going a whole other way. To have the sitting Attorney General go on, and I'm gonna call it faux news. I know some of y'all love it, but it's fake to me. To have her go on Fox News and to then decide that she wanted to send a threat to me, it was wrong. Because here it is, she is the highest law enforcement agent in this country, and people are watching and they are consuming this information, and they are believing that simply because I decided that I wanted to exercise my right to free speech, which I am not abridged from doing, that she then wanted to then politicize something that should not be politicized. I don't like Elon Musk. I'm gonna say it 50,000 times. I don't like him. I don't like that he going out there and he firing people. I think that he's a crook, because somehow the rest of us can't sit around and get whatever federal contracts we want. The rest of us can't sit around and get law enforcement and get them somehow ordained as federal law enforcement to protect him. The rest of us can't get our dealerships protected by the federal government. That is somebody that is operating above the law. For whatever reason, just because he has a lot of money, more money than everybody else. And yes, I am happy to see that on my birthday, which is what I said, there were peaceful protests around this world against him, because he is a problem. And so you never should have somebody that is sitting that high and is going to sit up here and threaten a sitting member of Congress when she knew good and well, if she watched the entire thing, that I specifically told protesters to make sure you consult with lawyers, just like I've told protesters over and over and over in the history of me advising people to go out and exercise their constitutional right. The fact that there are other sitting members that have received letters of threat from this new DOJ tells me that they are about retribution and they are not about following the law. The reason that our party, or I won't even say our party, our country, is torn apart is because we can't even agree on right versus wrong. This should not be left versus right. The only thing that we're asking is that we have law enforcement that will show up when there is an actual crime. If somebody calls and says, hey, I need you to investigate this cyber crime, or I need you to investigate this child pornography, or I need you to investigate this robbery, then we want somebody to show up, and we don't want them to look at us and act as if just because I'm black or because I'm woman, that I am not worthy of having that case investigated, because we have an administration that is continuously railing against diversity, equity, and inclusion, or we don't need people that show up that feel like diversity should not be valued. That is why we should have somebody that may show up and looks like me. The final thing that I'll say, because you've been gracious, is this. When I first became a public defender, I had no criminal defense experience. And I walked in and I told my boss, Charlie, I said, listen, you should hire me. He said, why? I said, because I'm black. Charlie looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, let me tell you something. When I walk in, I'm going to walk in with a level of rapport and understanding that maybe some of my other colleagues will not. Charlie offered me my job, and I worked my butt off, and I worked really, really hard for all of my clients, not just those that look like me, and that is what it looks like to serve. Thank you.
Patriots, what you just witnessed is courage in the face of tyranny. Representative Jasmine Crockett just called out the most dangerous abuse of power we've seen: the Attorney General of the United States using Fox News as a platform to threaten a member of Congress. Let that sink in. Pam Bondi, the nation's top law enforcement official, went on what Crockett brilliantly calls faux news, and I'm stealing that, to send a direct threat to a black congresswoman. Why? Because Crockett dared to exercise her constitutional right to free speech. Because she dared to criticize Elon Musk. This is what fascism looks like, folks. When the Attorney General weaponizes her office to silence political opponents, we're not living in a democracy anymore. We're living in an authoritarian state. But here's what they didn't expect. Jasmine Crockett didn't back down. She didn't apologize. She doubled down and said what millions of us are thinking. I don't like Elon Musk. I'm gonna say it 50,000 times. And she's absolutely right. Here's a billionaire who's getting special federal contracts, private federal security, government protection for his dealerships, operating completely above the law while the rest of us struggle to pay rent. That's not capitalism. That's oligarchy. The most chilling part? Crockett reveals that other city officials are getting threatening letters from Trump's DOJ. This isn't isolated. This is systematic intimidation of anyone who dares oppose this administration. They're not even hiding it anymore. And let's talk about the breathtaking hypocrisy here. Bondi goes on Fox News, a network that spreads more conspiracy theories than actual news, to attack a congresswoman for telling protesters to consult with lawyers. Crockett literally advised people to follow the law while exercising their constitutional rights, and somehow that's a threat? Meanwhile, we had January 6th insurrectionists literally trying to overthrow our government, and where's that same energy from Bondi? Nowhere. Because this isn't about law and order. It's about silencing dissent. What really gets me is when Crockett drops this truth bomb, both Democrats and Republicans in Congress are facing more death threats than ever. You know why? Because when the Attorney General normalizes threatening elected officials, when she uses the most powerful law enforcement position in the country to intimidate Congress members, she's giving permission to every extremist with a grudge. Crockett nailed it when she said this should be about right versus wrong, not left versus right. But Bondi and this administration have made it clear they're not interested in right or wrong. They're interested in power and retribution. And can we talk about the racist undertones here? It's not lost on me that the Attorney General chose to publicly threaten one of the few black women in Congress. This is the same administration railing against diversity, equity, and inclusion, as Crockett points out. They want law enforcement that looks like them, thinks like them, and protects only them. Crockett's story about becoming a public defender hits different in this context. She understood that representation matters, that when communities see themselves reflected in the justice system, it builds trust. But this administration wants the opposite. They want a justice system that serves only the powerful and threatens everyone else. Here's what terrifies me. If they can threaten a sitting member of Congress on national television without consequences, what do you think they'll do to regular citizens? If Jasmine Crockett isn't safe from DOJ intimidation, none of us are. But here's what gives me hope. Representatives like Crockett aren't backing down. She looked tyranny in the eye and said, "I'm going to keep speaking truth." She's showing us that the way to fight fascism isn't to cower. It's to stand taller, speak louder, and refuse to be silenced. When Crockett says people celebrated on her birthday with worldwide protests against Musk, she's showing us something powerful. We're not alone. Millions around the world see what's happening, and they're standing up. This moment is bigger than one congresswoman or one attorney general. This is about whether we'll have a democracy where elected officials can speak freely without fear of government retaliation. This is about whether the DOJ serves justice or serves as the enforcement arm of billionaires and authoritarians. Patriots, if you're as outraged as I am, share this video. Let people know that our Attorney General is threatening members of Congress for criticizing billionaires. Call your representatives and demand accountability. Because if we don't stand with Jasmine Crockett today, who's going to stand with us tomorrow? Remember, they want you silent. They want you scared. Every time you speak up, every time you share the truth, you're proving them wrong. Stay loud, stay proud, and keep fighting for the democracy we deserve.